Welcome back to Close But No Biscuit.
Fourth time lucky.
We have, yes, if that many attempts.
It's been a while.
Yeah, for those unfamiliar, this is a podcast we were doing before the politics one, where we look at films, TV shows, and games, but they're specifically films, video games, TV shows that are close but don't quite get the biscuit. As in, they are good, but
just not quite good enough.
Quite good enough.
Or maybe not perfect. Like sometimes they can be good, but there's just something missing.
Except the time we reviewed Godzilla 1998.
No, it got the creature design biscuit, but that's about all it got.
Before we get into this movie, I think we need to talk about, I guess, broadly the history of Godzilla in the West and what Legendary have done with their MonsterVerse, because they're trying to do a bit of the Marvel magic. But the question, of course, is it Marvel magic, or was this something that Godzilla and Toho actually invented back in the 50s?
Godzilla wasn't a shared universe until his third film, which was the original King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yep.
The original most ambitious crossover event in cinematic history. Apparently Frankenstein and Dracula and stuff were all a shared universe as well. As far as I've read it, Godzilla himself was inspired by the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, a Ray Harryhausen film, which is one of the few Ray Harryhausen films I've not managed to see because it's not been on TV. The execs were like, how can you possibly do a film that's full of all these monster scenes? You can't stop motion animate all of that. And they were like, we're gonna use suits. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
Godzilla comes out in 1954, the original in Japan. It was released in the States, but heavily re-edited to be friendly to the Western audience.
They added extra scenes, they dubbed all sorts of stuff.
Godzilla's always had this quite wobbly relationship with America, in the sense that a lot of it's sort of been lost in translation, it's been muddled, up until 1998, when we attempt, I really use the word even attempt loosely in this context, to try and do a legitimate Godzilla film through an American lens. And well, we did a full episode on this, and good God almighty, it was awful.
I do like the American Zilla design as a creature. It's not Godzilla, it looks nothing like Godzilla, it's not reminiscent of Godzilla in any way. It doesn't have the atomic ray, totally different posture, different silhouette. It's a cool creature, but it's not Godzilla, and the film is not remotely a Godzilla film. All of the characters are incredibly hateful. It's full of nasty people being nasty to each other.
It's a cruel, cynical, horrible little film.
It's just a horrible film. There's no, you don't want anyone to win. You want Godzilla to win, but then Godzilla's killed, and you're like, oh, great.
Its biggest crime, of course, is using the name, because one thing it most certainly isn't is a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
And my biggest beef with it is the fact that the character of Godzilla is shown to run away.
A lot.
And that is something that Godzilla just simply should never, ever do.
Also, the classic bit where they launch loads of missiles and they all miss. Like, the thing about Godzilla is the missiles all hit. The tanks, the Japanese self-defense force, they don't have a problem hitting Godzilla.
Within really minutes into it, there's a real feeling of giant monsters. That's fucking silly.
Yeah.
Like, the people that make it clearly hate that genre. And as we talked about before, it's so confusing because Roland Emmerich did this actually quite good movie called Independence Day, which, you know, you would think, right,
Stargate has its charms. Like, big spectacular sci-fi movies, like, that's basically what Godzilla is. It's a big spectacle. He was coming out of Independence Day as the top of his game in terms of clout in the industry, and yet, you know, you could choose just not to do the Godzilla film if you're not interested.
So in contrast, it's 2014, the door has been kicked down, and the great big balls of Gareth Edwards have walked through the frame of the door saying, motherfucker, I love Godzilla, let's goddamn do this. And good old Gareth then leads to a whole franchise really being created in the West from nothing, because it was even less than nothing.
Well, I think that's the thing, is that because of 98, I expected so little from Godzilla 2014. And it's quite a down-to-earth film. The sci-fi is quite low and hard. I didn't expect them, for example, to do the atomic breath at all, because 98 didn't do it. It was like, oh, that a giant lizard shooting laser beams? No, that's not cool. We can't possibly have that. So when Gareth Edwards does do that, and towards the end of the film when Godzilla's really opening up, there's the moment where the blue light climbs up his back and you get that and then he takes the deep breath, he goes I basically creamed myself in the cinema when that happened.
One thing Gareth Edwards is very good at doing is anticipation. So he's not just going to give you the atomic breath, he's going to give you the moment of the tease of, are they going to do it? They're doing it! This is what I want from a Godzilla film, oh god. 2014, yeah, I mean, we could linger on that a lot, but I think to get to the main event here, we've got to keep moving along.
Yes.
But it's a competent movie, everyone comes out of it,
movie.
Gets good reviews, and draws money at the box office, and hey-ho, off we go. And then we follow up with what I think is not just one of the best kaiju films ever made, but arguably one of my favourite movies of recent years.
I think it's
Kong Skull Island.
One of my favourite films of this millennium, I would definitely say.
This is something, again, you go into with probably higher expectations than 2014, but again, not really expecting the world from it. I've watched the film probably about 3 or 4 times now. It's darn near perfect as you could get for that kind of movie.
I think the thing that drains it for me is that I don't care for Kong as a monster, a monkey, but as a film, Jesus Christ, it's so good.
I think we should take a moment to talk about Skull Island here, only because the concept of tone is going to become, I think, quite a major talking point when we get to the main event of Godzilla vs. Kong. Because my opinion is that Skull Island is the perfect tone of any of these movies he did in the run. It is the perfect balance of there's enough threat, there's enough danger, there's enough wonder, there's enough high concept ideas, there's enough imagination.
But there's not too much.
Yeah, the key thing it's got going for it is the kind of comedy and humour. Let's use the word humour, actually, that's a better word, that I love in movies, where it's moments that make you laugh, but they are not gags. They're not jokes. So the best example in the film is one of the chopper pilots flying in the first time they see Kong, and he goes, is that a monkey? That is something that in the moment somebody would actually say, but it makes you laugh in the story, and it doesn't take you out of it. Whereas a lot of this modern, and it's largely Marvel doing it,
the mouse company,
the evil mouse company doing this shitty banter that goes nowhere, or just grind the movie to a halt to do a gag. Whereas Skull Island is, at least in modern terms, it's the best you're going to get in terms of stuff that will entertain you and make you laugh, but in no way that feels forced.
I think it's the forced, definitely. The moments of levity come from people reacting in ways that seem slightly ridiculous, but you can still see those characters doing that thing. Is that a monkey? And then Kong fucking rags on them. So it's funny, but it's also incredibly bleak at the same time. Because that's just before they get totally savage. And my favourite line is probably, monsters exist. No shit. I'm saying this out loud and I know it's hilarious, but when you watch it in the film, those two fucking heavyweights hamming, like chewing the scenery, you can feel the entire just universe being crunched up in their jaws when they deliver those lines. It's fucking perfect, but it's also funny, but it's not funny.
Everyone in the movie is taking this shit.
I think that's the key for me, is that they're never winking at the camera in a way that many more tonally inconsistent films of recent years do.
It's the evil mouse company. That's that exactly.
Because I think I struggle with those films a lot these days because they're definitely winking at the camera. The characters don't seem to be taking it serious. Everyone in Skull Island, they're all there. You know, the team of soldiers, they're all mates. They rib each other. So those ribbings are fun and funny, but they're also completely in context.
Because there's moments in it that are verging on horror. There's also stuff that by using that horror becomes funny. The tail whip death.
He's doing his heroic last stand. He's trying to sacrifice himself to get his pals away, which is in itself a beautiful thing. But then the creature's intelligent enough to know exactly what he is doing. So instead of biting down on him and dying, it's like, no, it's funny, tragic, and kind of all wrapped together. A giant fucking weird lizard has just tail whipped a guy into a cliff face and he's exploded. That's, you describe that and it's funny, but then you watch it and you're like, it's not funny. That sort of stuff is just so fucking good.
And it's that refusal to tell the audience there's no threat here. Don't you worry, they're going to make it out the other side. The greatness of these movies, and also it's because a lot of the human characters frankly don't reoccur, means you set up the premise that there's no guarantee anyone's getting out of this alive, which makes them inherently more perilous journeys to go on, because you don't know who's going to make it. And so we've had 2014 Godzilla, which we come out of, and I feel what Gareth accomplished there was more of a, it's okay lads, we're back on track. But Skull Island's a movie where you're like, we're not just back on track, we are fucking killing this. And then we follow up with King of the Monsters, which we've also done a full episode on, so again, we won't linger on this too heavily, but another pretty fair outing.
So I think I would say that with King of the Monsters, it goes way off the charts. it maybe throws a little bit too much into the pot.
Its feeling is that we probably needed 2 movies in between Skull Island to get to
I think it's in the original Toho run, you get Godzilla versus Kong, you get Mothra gets her own film, Godzilla versus Mothra, and then you get Rodan gets his own film, or there's 2 Rodans in the original film, and then like Rodan and Mothra and Godzilla then team up against King Ghidorah. That's about 5 films in. I feel like Ghidorah's a little bit wasted being kind of thrown in, and Mothra and Rodan are also a little bit wasted, just kind of tossed in there.
More Mothra was my big conclusion.
Definitely. So I think I would have gladly paid for a Mothra film and a Rodan film, and then the big ensemble versus Ghidorah, and then Kong can just fuck off. I don't know.
And on that note, it's now time for the Big Monkey's second Hollywood outing in the MonsterVerse with Godzilla versus Kong.
Here for one thing, the clues in the title. We want to see the giant lizard punch the giant monkey, and vice versa. And it gives us that.
As much as I don't hate this movie, Act 1, in particularly Act 1, is the weakest bit of the film. So it's 5 years after Godzilla's defeated King Ghidorah. Kong is martyred by Monarch within a giant dome on Skull Island.
Maybe a little bit of a stretch. Come on, guys. Did you really need a big dome? The worst part about this is how the entire tribespeople of Skull Island are wiped out off screen. The storm arrived and just killed everyone, and now there's only Kong and Monarch in the dome.
Kong is visited by Jia, who is one of the people you're talking about.
Literally the last tribes person.
Which there's none of this is on camera, so that's a bit of a wobble up with. And she is the adopted daughter of Kong expert Eileen Andrews, who is deaf and communicates with Kong via sign language. We then whip into a very sexy opening titles, which one of the great things about all these films Legendary is the continuity of the opening titles, and I think this has allowed them to get away with some of the grander steps they have taken in terms of tone between these movies, because the one thing that is very notable, especially now when you go back to Godzilla 2014, that we have moved a long way in tones.
We've gotten very big and very bombastic since then.
But this title sequence very much appears to tell you this is all very serious, whilst also being really fucking ridiculous, because it's all this stuff about the whole Earth and all.
Well, and then there's stuff where it's like, here's the monster that's been killed by Godzilla, and here's the monster that's been killed by Kong, and it's so fucking bonkers. But when you put it with that belting music,
the pseudoscience, the tournament fighter, kind of what they
but it's like there's so many like big budget sci-fis that want to be taken seriously. The title sequences are always the text appears on screen gently with some kind of whereas the hazy era of the Godzilla Toho films, they always have these giant big fucking lettering. Actually, I love that, and Godzilla vs. Kong gives me that fucking giant lettering, and I'm like, yes.
So hurtling out of our very sexy opening title sequence, we then arrive with Bernie Hayes, who is an employee of Apex Cybernetics. He's also the host of a Titan Conspiracy podcast, who wants to extract data suggesting sinister activities at an Apex facility. He felt a bit too comic relief.
He's a bit too goofy.
This is from the word go, I am trying to make you laugh, but in a way where often it doesn't quite land, and therefore by not landing, unlike at any other point in the franchise so far, this feels like, oh, we're trying to be funny now.
I would say the entire conspiracy podcast arc was misplotted.
Yeah.
To skip ahead in the plot, Kyle Chandler's character is a recurring character from King of the Monsters, and Madison comes up to him and is like, Godzilla, he's been our friend for ages, he's disappeared off the grid, and suddenly he just destroys this random civilian facility. And he goes, sometimes people change. Dude, in the last film, you were the guy who said there's a pattern. So the fact that he goes, there's not a pattern, is just broken. It's almost like the scriptwriters for Godzilla vs. Kong didn't read the previous script. I wouldn't say I'm the most detail-orientated film watcher in the universe, but Jesus fucking Christ, that jumped out to me as like, Monarch's purpose is to do the things you're immediately just saying we're not doing now. Instead of weird conspiracy podcast or goofball, Monarch should have been the ones going, no, we'll investigate this because something is up here. Literally, Kyle Chandler is a naturalist, a guy who understands animal behavior. He's the guy who should be going, no, actually, you're right, Maddie. I want you to stay at home and be safe, but also I need to investigate this, and then we can have her get off to hijinks to join the expedition anyway. Whereas, yeah, like Bernie feels like an absolute goofball. And some of the other conspiracy stuff is also, I feel like it's a little bit irresponsible. There's a bit where he's like, well, they put fluoride in the water or chlorine in the water to mind control, and it's like, that's dangerously plausible, and kids will be watching this and might actually get the wrong idea.
On the one hand, you're dealing with more like mythological elements to a certain degree, like Hollow Earth, which, okay, is kind of in the conspiracy ballpark, I'll grant that, but yeah, you're ramming that up against this, I dare say, Trumpian kind of shit, and you're like, I don't know if we want to frame that, generally speaking, as being good, and that is something especially I think will date the film quite badly in a way that Skull Island would not be affected by that kind of dating.
Because Madison, she affirms that conspiracy by saying, I don't drink tap water. So you said there the Hollow Earth is similar in sort of conspiracy mythology. I think there's a difference there because the Hollow Earth is that's got way more of a foot in the Loch Ness Monster. Even if it's a conspiracy, it's a natural phenomenon.
Yes, that's what
versus, no, literally the government are messing with your brain.
This kind of shit being in place made us uncomfortable and was not funny.
It wasn't necessary to the film.
Yes,
you can take that entire conspiracy podcaster stuff out and just have, why has Godzilla attacked this facility? And Monarch, it is literally their job to study these giant creatures. You get that in, and then they go, well, what are they building here? Blah, 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 blah. That is all the hook you need.
So the next thing I don't like about this is the Godzilla attack itself. So to, again, skip forward in the plot, all the kaiju monster attacks in this film are very well framed for the most part because we see the human reaction, but also the devastation that comes with that. So the next major attack is on the Navy ships, I think, from memory. And there's loads of shots of the guys in the jet fighters. They're terrified, they're dying, we're screaming. Whereas in this attack, which is effectively, in wrestling terminology, Godzilla's heel turn, is his big bad guy.
He's apparently being evil.
When he arrives, everyone just goes, he's here to be a cunt. No one actually has the moment of he's supposed to be the good guy. They just go, he's an asshole. And the jet fighters are launched, they're blatting Godzilla. But unlike every other sequence in the film later on, we don't really see any of the human impact of that. Godzilla comes out of the water, he swats a jet fighter out of the sky with no real reaction internally. There's then a moment in the movie which I remember where all the employees are being ushered to like an emergency exit, and it's very matter of fact, even though the speakers are going, kaiju alert, but all the extras aren't really doing much. And generally speaking, that whole sequence is weirdly played with the Bernie character more for laughs.
They also mentioned that Godzilla hasn't even been seen for the last 4 or 5 years. If Godzilla's quite effectively nowhere, Godzilla's not been seen for years, and then suddenly he's at this facility. Like, that in itself, people would be like,
There's a pacing problem.
There's a pacing problem. There's a linking back to the previous film's problem where they don't really emphasize the fact that Godzilla's not been seen for years. You need some kind of moment of quiet almost.
If you contrast this moment with in 2014 when he arrives and causes the tsunami, when you look at that and you watch this opening, and really only this opening, because the rest of the film I think actually handles a lot of this stuff quite well, but it very much feels like almost watching a cartoon of 2014.
It's very fast.
Rather than exactly,
because I think there's another detail where, so in King of the Monsters they establish that Godzilla flashes his spines when he's doing his threat displaying, intimidating people.
He's hulking up, brother.
In this attack, they show the briefest moments of him flashing his spines, but it doesn't get a chance to sink in. Whereas later on in dialogue, they're like, oh yeah, he was threat displaying. He was trying to intimidate a kaiju who wasn't there, implying that there's a kaiju being built. Yeah, it was too fast. It didn't really give you Godzilla has spent 5 minutes swimming around the bay, flashing his spines, getting no response, and then he goes into attack mode. Do some kind of real build-up.
In this sequence, we had to pick an emphasis. You either have to pick that Bernie is stealing secrets or Godzilla's blowing up the base, and we're trying to do two things at once with equal significance to the plot. I agree with you, just lose the Bernie plot. We don't need
I think
just cut
sorry,
that out.
Bernie.
Godzilla is the great good monster. That's what we've established in this canon. As you say, having him circling the bay and everyone going, what is this? Oh my goodness me. Oh, but he's the good guy. He won't hurt. And then you have the turn.
Because the average member of the populace doesn't understand that's a threat display.
Yeah,
you have like one guy in the crowd going, isn't that an intimidation tactic?
Which would be
a man who just knows.
And then have him running up telling people going, get away from the water, get away from the water. You know, and then have him
defect to Monarch.
I mean, without being dumb here, it's like if you've seen Jaws, just do Jaws. I mean, you look again back to 2014 before we even see Godzilla. There's the tremendous sequence in the beginning of the movie which takes place in the nuclear plant, and that is extremely harrowing, and we don't even see a monster in that. But that is an example of how to do a sequence where everything seems perfectly fine. Something's not right. Oh fuck, and we're then shitting our pants to the end of it. You know, and that's how this, given its narrative importance, that's what that should be. But it doesn't, and it doesn't show the human impact, and all we get is a really shitty cut to CNN News. Their headline is Godzilla now bad or something like this. I can't quite remember what they say. The movie should not tell me that. That should be apparent to me as a viewer. You should not have had to intersplice a news broadcast going, you're never going to guess what you've just seen because it feels like you might be confused. Here's the takeaway you should have had. Whereas that should just be clear to me.
But also, Godzilla is bad, but also he weirdly specifically attacked this only one weirdly specific place.
Which again is kind of lost, and we have our conspiracy guys shouting about it, and Madison starts shouting about it. But these are things that, you know, if you had just shot this in a much more clearer way, the facility, a lot of the shots of Bernie going through it, we're so caught up in focusing on Bernie and close shots doing Bernie humor, we're not really noticing what's around Bernie. And therefore, like, these are things that if you had just shot it to orientate the audience as to what this place is, don't have a character say it, don't tell me, show me it. Madison Russell, not happy with one comic relief character in the movie, has to go recruit another and brings her friend Josh along for the trip as well.
Another goofball.
More importantly, big chunky plot point coming up here. Apex CEO Walter Simmons recruits Nathan Lind, former Monarch scientist and Hollow Earth theorist, to guide a search for a power source into the Hollow Earth.
This is another bit that's a little bit weird, because in Kong Skull Island, the Monarch were the only people who took what's-his-face seriously about the Hollow Earth. Suddenly, we have an ex-Monarch scientist who was all about the Hollow Earth, but apparently Monarch fired him for knowing about the Hollow Earth. And also in King of the Monsters, we were literally in the Hollow Earth when we went in a submarine into the ancient ruins.
Was that the Hollow Earth, though? Was that not?
It's heavily implied that
they use some kind of chute, but that isn't the Hollow Earth. It's more an access tunnel to it.
It's like in Skull Island and King of the Monsters, the Hollow Earth, quote unquote, is implied to be just lots of very large caverns, very deep. They're hard to get to, but they are there, and that's where these monsters live. That's the right level of pseudoscience. That's an acceptable hand wave, as I think we've used the term before in this podcast. The way this film presents the Hollow Earth is you go down a fucking hyperspace tunnel, and then there's gravity weirdness. You don't need that. Just have a deep cavern that's hard to get to. At this point where, you know, his brother died because of a strong reverse gravitational effect. His brother could have died because of there's fucking monsters down there. That's all you needed. And then we can say, like, okay, Apex Cybernetics, instead of inventing the heaves to get you through the gravity inversion, you just say, no, actually, they're willing to put the money into laser guns that can kill monsters.
To clarify, the noisy sound effect Robbie just made is a reference to these machines, these craft that
the Hollow Earth something vehicle.
Yeah.
So Nathan gets hired not just by what's-his-face Walter, but also a Japanese man called Serizawa. There are no coincidences in film. Serizawa is the name of Ken Watanabe's character in the last two films. Let them fight. And you're like, who is this dude who's come out of nowhere but also has the name of one of the really important characters in the previous films? Apparently he's his son or something? one of the flaws with Skull Island, and I think to a degree King of the Monsters as well, is there are actually too many characters. Godzilla vs. Kong also has this problem, like Serizawa, this Serizawa character, he's given no actual purpose in the plot except to be Walter Simmons' Patsy. So cut him as a character.
Basically, we have too many things to look at and we don't know what's important because you're telling me everything's important.
Yeah.
Bernie's important, Serizawa's important, this Walter guy's important, you know, who's Nathan? You've hit me, and I mean, this must be within 10 minutes. Cutting out the opening title sequence, I don't know what the fuck to look at. Whereas in a comparable amount of time, let's use Men in Black 1 because it's a very good movie that establishes lots of things very fast in 5 minutes total. The opening of Men in Black is the sequence on the border.
Literally illegal aliens. Hey!
Right. So if you start off with a pun, you've already got it. It's fucking good. So Tommy Lee Jones walks in, and in the space of 5 minutes, we establish who the Men in Black are, what their purpose is, how they do their job, and how they function. And we also establish the aliens and how they hide amongst us. We establish the flashy thing. We understand the relationship between the two agents, so we set up our bookend for the movie by having Kay Flashy thing his former partner. That all happens, and I swear it's like less than 10 minutes. I mean, it's no longer than 10 minutes. The point being, though, is that's a very focused, singular scene, if you like. It's taking place essentially on the side of a road, and all of that's done in one. Contrast it with this and the amount of shit we have been hit with in 10 minutes. I don't know where to look. Also, unlike in other movies that are sequels, usually if you're doing a sequel to, say, Indiana Jones, we would start with Indy. So in Indy, we're like, right, I remember this roller coaster cart. I've been on the Indy roller coaster cart before. And then, he's meeting somebody new. How interesting. Whereas here, we don't know anybody. We kind of know Madison, but we're basically being dumped in completely cold.
And we know Godzilla.
And we don't open with
Kong.
Madison. We don't start with her. We're in this nonsense dome with two characters who are brand new to us. And then we hit a title sequence. This all seems very interesting, but also a lot of information to hit us with in one go. We're then writing with Bernie going, who the fuck's Bernie? We're then in a facility going, where the fuck are we? Godzilla's then turned up. In between this, we've cut shots of two of the main villains. Which is the main villain? I can't work out because you haven't told me. And now here's Nathan. It's way too much, way too fast. This doesn't feel like a natural this happens, therefore that happens plot. It feels more of a, and then this happens, and this happens, and this happens.
I have a broader concern that I think Godzilla vs. Kong did not need Mechagodzilla in it to make a good film.
Nathan has now hooked up with the shady businessmen who have invented the heaves. Nathan then meets out with Eileen, who I think is implied to be an ex, maybe not, don't really know.
Ex-colleague, if not squeeze,
something like that. So Nathan meets up with her and convinces her to let Kong guide them through the Hollow Earth via an outpost in Antarctica. Nathan, Eileen, and an Apex team led by Walter's daughter, who's in it for like 5 minutes.
Maya is also an extra character we don't need.
So they board a barge escorted by the US Navy that carries a sedated and restrained Kong. Godzilla then attacks the convoy and defeats Kong. But
this fight sequence is fucking brilliant. I've seen Godzilla fighting through cities, you've seen him fighting through greenery and forests, but they've done something novel with it. They've put them on the aircraft carriers, put them in the water. Kong's using the fucking fighter jet as a shuriken.
The POV shots inside the jet fighters.
Yeah.
And the loop, and you go around. There's moments in the movie that actually feel like being on a roller coaster.
It also, the way they cut in bits of the human action as well. They're in the ship's bridge as it gets washed underwater, and then Nathan's got to go and pull the lever to free Kong so he can fight back. So you have this beautiful intertwining of the human story and the monster story. That's the shit that we're here for. Like this is really good stuff.
And this is to contrast the Godzilla attack in the beginning with this.
Yeah.
Because the reason why one works and one doesn't is because here the focus is the fight. That's the only thing we're establishing is the fight. So the director now knows what to do because he knows what the goal is. What is the purpose of the scene? The purpose is tension, scary, drama, roller coaster
monsters punching each other.
Wah! All that peril and danger is just not in the opening attack, and it's here in spades. But what that did tell me was, I think we're going to be okay till the end now. Godzilla attacks the convoy and defeats Kong, but retreats after the ships disable their power and trick him into thinking they are destroyed.
A monster can win a fight without killing the other. Problem with a lot of modern cinema is that you kill the villain. We can keep the villain. We can keep the cool villain around. We can defeat him, but not kill him. We know that Godzilla was the categorical winner of that encounter, but both Godzilla and Kong are still alive. So that means we could do this forever. We could just keep on going and going and going and going.
To avoid alerting Godzilla, Kong is airlifted to the Hollow Earth entrance.
They could just have airlifted him the whole way.
They could have.
I love the way when Kong is set down and he's like, what is snow? That kind of humanizing of this giant ape who's like, no, actually, he is a thinking, clever, curious creature. I did enjoy when Kong finally agrees to go into the underground area, and there's just this fucking ice cavern with fucking girders, and he's swinging from the girders. Again, one of these sort of nods to the classic Kong swinging through the trees, but it's sort of sci-fi, really cool space. You let him swing through it, and the little heaves are going around about him, and it's just like, actually, I do love that. Okay. I love what they did with the Hollow Earth. Beautiful jungle area with these weird creatures in it. Big Hydra monster with its flappy wings, and then Kong has a nice little fight against those. There's that little throwaway shot of a load of crabs, giant crabs.
I think they do overstay the welcome a bit. I remember there's some zero-G Kong floating around stuff that I thought, oh, we're making a bit too much of a meal of this.
Again, this comes back to my point where I think you could have done this with just large caverns under the earth without the gravity bullshit.
Madison and Josh find Bernie, who joins their investigation. Comedy troupe sneak into the wrecked Apex base, discover a secret facility underground, and are inadvertently locked into an underground Hyperloop type transport to Apex headquarters.
So this is a little bit weird to me because why would you hide?
Why would you not market that?
Apex cybernetics seem incredibly advanced compared to anything else on Earth.
And what it smacked of was, remember my complaints when we had a good old whinge about Jurassic Park and how I said this about The Lost World, where we cut back in like a post, we've brought dinosaurs back to life, post this level of DNA science. The city just...
Cancer still exists.
Yeah, it just looks like a regular town. But of course it wouldn't, because in this world, it would have to have all this knock-on effects of this happens, therefore that happens. This Hyperloop is such a good microcosm example of that logic breaking.
Incredibly advanced.
Where if you have that, the cities look different. Everything is different if we have that.
We have the heaves, so we've already had some level of... Actually, no, we've got ridiculous technology floating around.
This is something that, broadly speaking, I felt that King of the Monsters did quite well. It suggested there's been advancements since 2014 based on what happened with Godzilla, and mainly it happened with the military, and you're like, yep. And you buy that, whereas here, this is a private civilian company that's doing all this stuff.
Within 5 years.
And you're like, capitalism would dictate they would be fucking owning everything. Cool idea, kinda, but rolled out with no logic boxing. It's just fucking happening.
Like, the design of these spaces is fantastic. Really striking, really visually vibrant. It's not that it's bad as a whole, it's just like, as a piece in this puzzle of this narrative, it kind of fucking doesn't fit at all.
Independence Day 2 really sucked. Did this shit really well.
For the first 10 minutes or so. America
that exact framing is what you have here, where if the Hyperloop is there with a private company, your back.
And this company is implied to be very successful and very prevalent in society.
Level stuff. So that's something that, again, interesting, but if you do that stuff, you have to back it up. Stagger these movies out, because it feels like that's like a
5 years after the first Godzilla attack is too soon for Mechagodzilla.
It's too soon for Hyperloop.
So I think there is definitely a lot of leaping going on.
If you set this,
I'm also like, I think it's worth mentioning that the original Mechagodzilla was a creation by aliens, whereas here it's just like, no, we just build Mechagodzilla.
So the fucking Hyperloop happens. We speed to Hong Kong, our comedy troupe, and unwittingly stumble on a test of Mechagodzilla.
I think the reveal of Mechagodzilla is there's the steam and the huge space and the blackness, and then the monster rises up and then you see it and then it chunks. They do that really well. I just think Mechagodzilla doesn't really make sense in this context. The original Mechagodzilla, the very original, he starts off as literally clothed in fake Godzilla skin. The aliens have built Mechagodzilla in the shape of Godzilla to fuck around with humans. Why would humans build a monster shaped like Godzilla? Pacific Rim. They don't build the Jaegers in the shapes of the monsters. They build them in reasonable shapes with guns strapped on in whatever places they can put them. You build for combat efficiency. You don't build for looking like another monster. Mechagodzilla was a step too far. but I'm conflicted about this because it leads to such a great climax.
So, comedy troupe, find Mechagodzilla. Discover that Mechagodzilla is telepathically controlled by Ren Zerazawa.
Okay, that's another high concept just thrown in there out of nowhere. Psionics. By the way, Ghidorah was psionic.
Yes, this is another high concept idea layered upon 12 other bullshit high concept ideas.
Half an hour later, the psionic connection is broken by pouring alcohol on a console, which is a satellite link. So it's like, actually, it's not telepathy then, it's a satellite link.
Telepathy, yeah, a huge new idea that's been dropped in here.
Dropped in casually.
Dropped in.
Bernie, because Bernie's just like, oh yeah, they must be using a psionic link. And you're like, wait.
Where'd you get that from?
Previous Godzilla films absolutely have used the concept of telepathy and psionics, but Jesus fucking Christ, you can't just say that as a one-word sentence throwaway.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what Bernie's character is there to do. Is that Robo-Godzilla? No, it's Mecha-Godzilla.
That was really annoying, because it's just like, don't name it. If you're gonna do that, something stupid like that, just don't name it. We all know what it is.
The Mechagodzilla is telepathically controlled by Ren Zerazawa through the neural networks from the skull of a severed Ghidorah head.
But that's the critical point, though, is that inside Mechagodzilla there's one Ghidorah skull. Inside the control room there's another Ghidorah skull. That is how they are controlling each other.
And there also the power limitations too.
That's very, very wobbly part.
It's
you can download an extra, more powerful version by scanning the thing in the Hollow Earth. And
how does this tech work?
But yeah, you go down to the Hollow Earth, you have to fucking bring it back again. You can't just scan it and then be like, oh yeah, we've got the power now.
It also feels like if you're able to sustain a Hyperloop transport link,
you've got a lot of power.
You've got a lot of power. Inside the Hollow Earth, Kong and the team discover Kong's species' ancestral throne room, where they find remains of an ancient war with Godzilla's kind.
Is another giant high concept. By the way, not just is Kong a clever sentient creature, he's descended from an ancient super civilization.
And we ain't done yet, because there's a big fucking glowing axe down there too, and it looks awfully like one of Godzilla's dorsal plates.
Yeah.
So that, again, is in itself quite a high concept idea.
Very high concept idea, but it is novel. We've not done that before. Toho have not done that before. Roland Emmerich definitely did not the fuck do that before. So like,
they seem to conclude
it's fresh.
This is sort of the power source. I think the Apex team seem to connect the signature through scanny bullshit.
Yeah, they do some weird shit, and somehow power is transmitted to Mechagodzilla has maximum power because they scanned the axe. It's bad sci-fi. I'm sorry.
Godzilla arrives in Hong Kong, and sensing Kong as in the monkey, not the city, Godzilla directly drills a shaft to the throne room with his atomic breath.
Previously, when we went to the Hollow Earth, we had this weird gravity inversion, hyperspace, fucking bullshit. But this time, apparently, Godzilla can just drill a hole, and Kong can just fall down the hole, comes out, and it's all fine. And then there's no kind of hyperspace.
Maya and the Apex team attempt to escape in the ensuing mayhem of the nonsensical plot, but their heave is crushed
because
by
Maya's
Kong.
Evil and she deserves it. It's fine.
It's crushed by Kong.
So we're left with Eileen, Gia, Nathan.
Kong, Eileen, Gia, and Nathan ascend to Hong Kong with Kong.
There's this idea of rounds of fights. In the first initial instance, Kong with his axe beats Godzilla, wins round 2, so it's 1-1. And then we come back for round 3 and it's we just keep fighting and it's great.
So our comedy troupe of Madison, Josh and Bernie are caught by security and taken to Walter. Despite Ren Zerazawa's concerns over the power source's volatility, Walter orders him to activate Mechagodzilla, now possessed by Ghidorah's consciousness.
That's another high concept, isn't it?
It's like we're on a bus going through a town called bullshit. If we just keep the bus going above 70 miles per hour, no one's going to have time to look out the window and go, this really looks like bullshit, because this is happening so fast. I cannot stress enough how quickly these high concepts are hitting you in the face. And it is, dare I say, rather J.J. Abrams, in the sense
there's too many.
We are not going to give you a split second to go, wait a minute, because you're not waiting a minute, because someone's driving that bus going,
there's no waiting.
Sir, there is no waiting on this bus.
There is only forwards.
You're on the Hyperloop, bitch. Strap in. What's that?
I wonder if this is another nod. So one of the Millennium films films, they build a Mecha Godzilla around the skeleton of dead Godzilla, and then the spirit of dead Godzilla takes over the Mecha Godzilla. There's an element of that sort of spiritual idea of the bones still have the spirit, the soul of the creature, but in this case we have the skull of Ghidorah instead. So apparently, given all of the extra power, the spirit of Ghidorah comes out and is like, fuck Godzilla, which is a fair thought. That's what Ghidorah's like, that's what he does, like, that's fine. The instinctive response of Ghidorah to kill Godzilla is fine. But having said all of that, I just love the way this fight plays out. Godzilla and Kong fight in Hong Kong. Kong. Kong wins. Godzilla gets back up again because he's fucking Godzilla. Godzilla wins. In the original King Kong versus Godzilla, Kong randomly gains electric powers at some point and manages to defeat Godzilla by a fucking ass pool. For that entire film, Godzilla's fucking winning. So I was delighted when, for round 3, Godzilla fucking definitively wins. Despite Kong, with all his fucking axe and all his bullshit and all his help from the humans, Godzilla, the fucking laser lizard, still wins. And I was like, yes! But then, once Godzilla has won, Mecha Godzilla emerges.
So Mecha Godzilla kills Walter, electrocutes Ren, and then attacks Hong Kong, the city, not the monkey.
Yeah, so Mecha Godzilla at this point, possessed by the dead spirit of King Ghidorah.
Godzilla and Mecha Godzilla battle, but Godzilla is overwhelmed.
Mecha Godzilla is just so fucking good.
Nathan revives Kong, the monkey, not the city, by destroying the heave on his chest. Gia convinces him to help Godzilla. As Mecha Godzilla overpowers both titans, Josh short circuits Mecha Godzilla's controls with Bernie's flask of liquor.
I mean, again, I wonder if this is another forced nod to the original film, because in the original film they disrupt Mecha Godzilla's controls because he's remotely controlled by fucking aliens, and that's an important point, that he's controlled by aliens. But in this case, Mecha Godzilla is possessed by King Ghidorah. At this point, the satellite controls are irrelevant because there's a Ghidorah skull in Mecha Godzilla, so fuck it. Yeah. Why are we pouring anything on satellite control? It doesn't matter. It's up to Godzilla's brute force with Kong's assistance. Because the climactic moment is Godzilla tries to defeat Mecha Godzilla, fails, Kong assists, and it's the tag team. I don't think Mecha Godzilla belongs in this film, but I love how the two monsters team up to defeat him. And then once Mecha Godzilla is destroyed, Godzilla and Kong roar at each other, and then Gia's like, let it go. And Kong's like, okay, I'm gonna let it go. I was expecting Hollywood to make the Hollywood monster win, but to let the OG, the true king of the monsters win, like the Japanese monster to win. No, I can forgive so much because they let the real winner win, and Godzilla is the better monster, and I'm all about that.
I think my overall take on it is the perfect kaiju fan popcorn movie as an actual piece of interesting cinema. It's probably one of the worst films I've ever seen.
I think let's say, like, Skull Island is definitely the peak of the MonsterVerse so far.
Yeah, there's certain movies now and again from those niche things that they cross over that line of making something that's so good. Wrath of Khan did this to enter into, that was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
In the mainstream, this ain't that.
No.
Skull Island 100% is, and that's why I have to say, as much fun as I did have watching it, I know in my heart this has many failings, and this is why it's probably, of all the films we've ever discussed on this podcast, the most perfect encapsulation of Close But No Biscuit.
And
on that note,